bus shelter offered little protection from the December wind that cut through the city streets like a knife. Emma Patterson sat on the cold metal bench, clutching her worn cardigan around her thin frame, trying to make herself as small as possible against the bitter cold. Snow fell in thick flakes, accumulating on the sidewalk and turning the evening into a scene from a Christmas card that felt nothing like the holiday it was supposed to represent. It was Christmas Eve, and Emma was alone, broke, and terrified about what tomorrow would bring at 28. She had imagined her life would look very different by now. She had dreamed of a career, a home, maybe a family. Instead, she was 3 months behind on rent, recently laid off from her job at a closing retail store, and down to her last $10, the final remnant of her emergency fund that had been depleted by medical bills from her mother's illness the previous year. Her mother had passed 6 months ago, leaving Emma with grief, debt, and a profound loneliness that the approaching holiday only intensified. She had no other family, no close friends who weren't dealing with their own struggles, no safety net to catch her fall. The bus was late, as usual. Emma checked her phone. The screen cracked from a fall she couldn't afford to repair, and saw it was nearly 8 o'clock. She was heading to a homeless shelter across town, having finally accepted that she couldn't pay her rent and needed to find somewhere to stay before her landlord formally evicted her. The $10 bill in her pocket was supposed to be for the bus fare and maybe a cheap meal tomorrow. After that, she had no idea what she would do. As Emma sat shivering, she noticed a man approaching the bus shelter. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, wearing a thin jacket inadequate for the weather. He walked with a limp, and his weathered face spoke of years spent outdoors in all conditions. He carried a small backpack and moved with the careful deliberation of someone's body hurt with every step. The man sat down on the opposite end of the bench, as far from Emma as the small shelter allowed, respecting her space. He pulled his thin jacket tighter and cupped his hands, blowing into them to generate warmth. Emma noticed he wore no gloves, no hat, nothing to protect him from the brutal cold. His shoes were worn through in places, and she could see layers of clothes underneath his jacket, the kind of layering homeless people did to stay warm. For several minutes, they sat in silence. Two strangers united only by their need for a bus and shelter from the snow. Then the man began to cough, a deep, rattling sound that shook his whole body. It went on for nearly a minute, and when it finally subsided, Emma could see him shaking, not just from cold, but from exhaustion. "Are you okay?" Emma asked quietly. The man looked up, surprised to be addressed. "Yeah, I'm all right. Just a cold. Nothing serious." But Emma could tell it was more than just a cold. The man looked sick, genuinely sick, the kind of sick that needed medical attention he clearly wasn't getting. "Where are you heading?" Emma asked, not sure why she was engaging, but unable to ignore the obvious suffering beside her. "There's a shelter over on Maple Street. They serve Christmas dinner on the 24th and let people stay the night. I'm hoping to get there before they fill up. The Maple Street shelter. That's where I'm going to." The man smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. "Well then, we're travel companions for the evening. I'm Robert, by the way. Robert Hall. Tom Patterson. Nice to meet you." They fell into conversation, the kind that happens between strangers who know they'll likely never see each other again, and therefore feel safe sharing truths they might otherwise hide. Robert told her about his life, how he had been a construction worker before an accident injured his back and left him unable to work, how his savings had disappeared into medical bills, how his apartment had been lost, how he had been living on the streets for 3 years now. "I had a daughter once," Robert said quietly, staring out at the falling snow. "Haven't seen her in 5 years. We had a falling out after her mother died. I was angry, drinking too much, saying things I didn't mean. She tried to help, but I pushed her away. By the time I wanted to make things right, she'd moved away, changed her number. I don't even know where she is now." "Sorry," Emma said, feeling the weight of his regret. It's my own fault. But I think about her every day. Wonder if she's happy, if she's safe. Wonder if she thinks about her old man at all, or if she's just glad to be rid of me. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She thought about her own mother, about the last months they had together, about how grateful she was they had reconciled their own differences before it was too late. I'm sure she thinks about you, Emma said. You don't stop loving your parents just because things got difficult. Robert nodded, not entirely convinced, but wanting to believe. What about you? What brings a young woman like you to a homeless shelter on Christmas Eve? Emma told him, the words pouring out in a rush she couldn't control. About her mother's death, the medical debt, losing her job, the impossibility of finding new employment during the holidays, the rent she couldn't pay. About feeling like she had failed at life before it had even really begun. You haven't failed, Robert said firmly. You're surviving impossible circumstances. That's not failure, that's courage. The bus finally appeared through the snow, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Emma stood, reaching for the $10 bill in her pocket, but as she pulled it out, she noticed Robert wasn't moving. Aren't you coming? Emma asked. Robert smiled sadly. I don't have bus fare. I was planning to walk, but the shelter is about 5 miles from here. In this weather, it'll take me a couple hours, but I'll make it. Emma looked at the $10 bill in her hand. It was enough for one bus fare, maybe two if the driver was feeling generous. But it was also the last money she had in the world. She thought about walking 5 miles in this weather while healthy. For Robert, in his condition, with that cough and that limp, it could be dangerous. Maybe fatal. Emma made a decision that defied all logic and self-preservation. Here, she said, holding out the $10 bill to Robert. Take the bus. You need it more than I do. I can't take your money, Robert protested. You need it as much as I do. Please. You're sick, and it's freezing. I'm young and healthy. I can walk. You take the bus, young lady. That's your last money. I can see it in your face. Don't give away what you need to survive. And don't you argue with me about what I choose to do with my own money, Emma said with a small smile. Please, Robert, let me do this. It's Christmas Eve. Let me do one good thing on a day when I felt pretty useless. Robert's eyes filled with tears. He took the bill with shaking hands. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Doesn't seem like enough. It's enough. Just get to the shelter safely. And Robert, about your daughter. Try to find her. Send her a letter. Even if she doesn't respond, at least you'll know you tried. Life's too short for regrets. The bus pulled up and Robert boarded, turning back one more time to look at Emma through the window. She waved, trying to look confident despite the fear flooding through her at the realization of what she had just done. The bus pulled away, leaving Emma alone at the shelter as snow continued to fall. She checked her phone for the walking directions to the shelter. 5.2 miles. In this weather, it would take her at least 2 hours, maybe more. She was already cold, already tired, and night was falling fast. Emma started walking, trying to stay positive, one foot in front of the other. She could do this. She had survived worse, except she wasn't sure she had survived worse. And as the blocks passed and the cold seeped deeper into her bones, Emma began to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake. Her fingers were going numb despite being shoved deep in her cardigan pockets. Her thin canvas shoes were soaked through, and she couldn't feel her toes anymore. The wind cut through her inadequate clothing like it wasn't even there. After walking for nearly 40 minutes, Emma realized she was in trouble. Her body was shaking uncontrollably. Her thoughts were becoming fuzzy. She knew these were signs of hypothermia, knew she needed to get inside somewhere. But there was nothing open on this route. Closed businesses and industrial buildings locked tight for the holiday. Emma stopped at another bus shelter, collapsing onto the bench, trying to warm up enough to continue. But she was so tired. And the bench was almost comfortable, if she just closed her eyes for a minute. She was drifting toward sleep when she heard the sound of a vehicle pulling up. Emma forced her eyes open, expecting to see a police car or maybe another bus. Instead, she saw a black limousine, sleek and expensive, completely out of place in this industrial neighborhood on Christmas Eve. The rear window rolled down, and a man's face appeared. He was perhaps in his late 30s, handsome in a refined way, wearing what was clearly an expensive suit and coat. "Excuse me," the man called out. "Are you all right?" Emma tried to respond, but her teeth were chattering too hard to form words. She managed a small shake of her head. The man immediately opened the car door and stepped out, striding over to where Emma sat. Up close, she could see genuine concern in his eyes. "You're hypothermic," he said, his voice firm but kind. "How long have you been out here?" "Walking," Emma managed to say. "About 40 minutes, trying to get to shelter." "Which shelter?" "Maple Street." "That's miles from here. In your condition, you won't make it." He pulled off his expensive wool coat and wrapped it around Emma's shoulders. The warmth was immediate and overwhelming. "I'm taking you to the hospital." "Can't afford hospital," Emma protested weakly. "Then I'll pay for it." "Come on, let's get you in the car, where it's warm." The man helped Emma to her feet and guided her to the limousine. Inside, the heat was running, and there were heated seats that felt like heaven against Emma's frozen body. The man climbed in after her and instructed the driver to head to the nearest hospital. "I'm Alexander Winters," the man said, pulling a blanket from a compartment and wrapping it around Emma's legs. "I'm CEO of Winters Technology. I was on my way home from a poor dinner when I saw you at the shelter. You looked like you were in trouble." "Emma Patterson," she managed through chattering teeth. "Thank you for stopping. Most people wouldn't have." "Most people should be ashamed of themselves then," Alexander said. "No one should be out in this weather without proper protection, and no one should be in medical distress without help. It's basic human decency." As the warmth of the car began to penetrate Emma's frozen body, she started to cry. The stress, the fear, the cold, the kindness, it all overwhelmed her defenses. She sobbed, unable to stop, and Alexander sat quietly, offering a handkerchief, but otherwise giving her space to release the emotions. "I'm sorry," Emma finally said, wiping her eyes. "I'm not usually such a mess." "You're allowed to be a mess. It's been a rough night for you, I imagine." Emma found herself telling Alexander everything, just as she had told Robert earlier. The job loss, the debt, the approaching eviction, the decision to give away her last $10 to a sick stranger who needed bus fare more than she did. "You gave away your last money to help someone else?" Alexander asked, his tone unreadable. "No, it was stupid. But he was so sick, and the walk would have been too much for him. I couldn't let him try it." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "That wasn't stupid. That was one of the most selfless things I've heard in a long time. Most people, faced with your circumstances, would have held tight to that last bit of security. You gave it away because someone needed it more. That's remarkable." They arrived at the hospital, and Alexander insisted on accompanying Emma inside, on providing his insurance information to cover her treatment, on staying while doctors checked her vital signs and confirmed she would be fine with warming and rest. Only after Emma was cleared medically, sitting in the emergency room with hot chocolate and heated blankets, did Alexander sit down beside her. "Emma, I'd like to propose something, but I need you to understand, I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing it because I believe what you did tonight revealed a character that's increasingly rare in the world. I run a technology company with over 2,000 employees. We're always looking for people with integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right, even when it costs them something. Those qualities can't be taught. Either you have them or you don't. You clearly have them." "I don't understand," Emma said. "I'd like to offer you a job. We have an opening in our community outreach department, working on programs that help underserved populations access technology and job training. It's a real position with a real salary and benefits. But more than that, it's work that aligns with who you seem to be as a person, someone who cares about helping others. Emma stared at him in shock. You're offering me a job tonight when you just met me an hour ago? I'm offering you an opportunity. The final hiring decision would involve interviews and proper vetting, of course, but I'm offering to fast-track that process and to provide temporary housing until your first paycheck. Emma, I saw you sitting at that bus stop, clearly in crisis, and I saw you walk away from safety to help someone else. That told me everything I needed to know about your character. The rest, skills and experience, they can be developed. But integrity, that's inherent. I don't know what to say. This seems impossible. It's Christmas Eve. Miracles are supposed to happen, right? Consider this yours, on one condition. What's that? That you continue being exactly who you are. That you don't let cynicism or hardship turn you into someone who looks away from others' suffering. The world has enough people who only look out for themselves. We need more people like you. Emma started crying again, but this time from relief and gratitude so overwhelming she couldn't contain it. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means. Casually, I think I do, Alexander said quietly. 20 years ago, I was sleeping in my car, trying to finish college while working 3 jobs. A professor saw me one morning, figured out my situation, and hired me as a research assistant with a salary that let me rent a room and eat regular meals. He said he was investing in my potential. I promised myself that if I ever had the resources, I'd do the same for someone else. Tonight, you're that someone. How do you know I won't disappoint you? Because you gave away your last $10 to a sick stranger when you were facing homelessness yourself. People who do that don't suddenly become selfish or lazy when given opportunities. They become beacons for others. Alexander's driver, who had been waiting patiently, approached. Sir, there's someone here asking for Miss Patterson. Emma looked up, confused, as Robert appeared in the doorway of the emergency room. The older man looked healthier already, having gotten out of the cold, and apparently received some medical attention at the shelter. Emma, Robert called out, rushing over. I heard from the shelter director that you never arrived. I was so worried. When I described you to the police, they said someone had brought a woman matching your description here. Are you okay? I'm fine. But what are you doing here? You should be at the shelter, resting. The shelter director drove me. When I told her about the young woman who gave me her last money so I could take the bus while she walked, she insisted we try to find you and make sure you were safe. She said anyone with that kind of heart deserved looking after. Alexander listened to this exchange with growing interest. So, you're the man Emma gave her bus fare to? I am. And I've been sick about it ever since, knowing she was out there in the cold because of me. It wasn't because of you, Emma said firmly. It was my choice, and I'd make it again. Alexander smiled. Robert, I am Alexander Winters. I run a technology company. We have a program that provides job training and employment assistance to people experiencing homelessness. If you're interested, I'd like to help you get off the streets and into stable housing and work. It won't be easy, but if you're willing to put in the effort, we have resources that can help. Robert looked between Alexander and Emma, his eyes filling with tears. I don't understand what's happening. Is this real? It's real, Emma said, taking his hand. It's a Christmas miracle for both of us. Over the following months, both Emma and Robert's lives transformed in ways neither could have imagined. Emma thrived in her new position, developing programs that provided technology, access, and training to underserved communities. Her compassion and understanding of struggle made her exceptional at her job, able to connect with people others might have overlooked or dismissed. Robert went through job training, received medical care for his chronic conditions, and was placed in transitional housing. With support and structure, he began to rebuild his life. And with Emma's encouragement, he finally worked up the courage to write to his daughter. 6 months after that Christmas Eve, Robert's daughter responded. She had married, had children of her own, and had spent years wondering about her father. The reunion was tearful and healing, beginning a process of rebuilding their relationship. Emma attended that first meeting between Robert and his daughter, holding his hand as he nervously waited at the coffee shop where they had agreed to meet. When his daughter walked in and saw him, she started crying, and Robert stood to embrace her, both of them holding each other as years of pain and separation began to dissolve. "Thank you," Robert's daughter said to Emma afterward. "He told me about what you did, how you gave away your last money to help him. He said it reminded him that kindness still existed in the world, that maybe he deserved a second chance at life and at relationships. You saved my father in more ways than one." Emma's relationship with Alexander evolved as well, though slowly and thoughtfully. They became friends first, bonding over their shared commitment to using resources to help others. Alexander included Emma in strategic decisions about the company's charitable programs, valuing her perspective and lived experience. One evening, nearly a year after that Christmas Eve, Alexander invited Emma to dinner at an upscale restaurant. Over wine and excellent food, he told her about his past, about the professor who had helped him, about his determination to pay that kindness forward. "When I saw you at that bus stop, I saw myself 20 years ago," Alexander said. "Desperate, alone, out of options. But I also saw something I didn't have, a willingness to sacrifice for someone else, even when you had nothing to spare. That quality is rare, Emma. It's precious, and it's one of many things I've come to admire about you over this past year." "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Emma asked, her heart beating faster. "Okay, I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you. Not because I helped you, but because of who you are. Your compassion, your strength, your absolute refusal to let hardship make you bitter or selfish. I love you, Emma, and I'm hoping you might feel something similar for me." Emma felt tears well up, happy tears this time. "I do feel something similar. I've been afraid to admit it because of how we met. Because I didn't want you to think I was just grateful or trying to take advantage of your generosity. But Alexander, I love you too. You're kind and thoughtful, and you use your success to lift others up. You see people, really see them, in ways most people don't. How could I not love you?" Their engagement was announced 6 months later. Then the wedding took place on Christmas Eve, exactly 2 years after the night they met. Robert walked Emma down the aisle, having become like a father to her in the time since their chance meeting at that bus stop in his toast at the reception. Alexander told the story of that night, of finding Emma at the bus shelter, of learning she had given away her last money to help a stranger. "Emma taught me something that night that I have forgotten," Alexander said to the assembled guests. "That wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the willingness to share what you have, even when you have almost nothing." She was poorer than I had ever been in my worst days, and yet she gave from her poverty to help someone else. That's not just generosity, it's grace, and it's why I fell in love with her, why I want to spend the rest of my life learning from her example and trying to be worthy of her love." Emma responded with her own toast when I gave Robert that $10 bill. I thought I was giving away my last bit of security. What I didn't know was that I was actually investing in something priceless. That small act of kindness started a chain of events that gave me back everything I thought I had lost: a career, a home, a family, and love I never imagined I deserved. Robert and Alexander both taught me that miracles don't always look like we expect them to. Sometimes they're limousines pulling up when you've given up hope, and sometimes they're the courage to give away what you can't afford to lose, trusting that somehow things will work out. Years later, the Winters Foundation became one of the most respected charitable organizations in the country, providing job training, housing assistance, and support services to people experiencing homelessness and poverty. Emma ran the foundation, bringing her understanding of struggle and her commitment to treating everyone with dignity. Robert worked for the foundation too, using his own experience of homelessness to connect with and mentor others trying to rebuild their lives. His relationship with his daughter and grandchildren flourished, and he often said that Emma's gift of that $10 bill had bought him far more than a bus ride. It had bought him a second chance at life in every Christmas Eve. Emma, Alexander, and Robert returned to that bus shelter where it all began. They brought warm meals, blankets, and information about services for anyone waiting there in the cold. They sat and talked with people, listening to their stories, seeing their humanity, remembering that everyone deserves compassion and that you never know when a small act of kindness might change everything. The miracle that pulled up in a limousine that Christmas Eve wasn't just about rescue or opportunity. It was about the power of choosing compassion, even when it costs you everything. About the ripple effects of kindness that extend far beyond the initial gesture. And about how sometimes giving away your last $10 is the best investment you'll ever make. Because that $10 bill didn't just buy Robert a bus ride. It set in motion events that transformed 3 lives, created a foundation that helped thousands, and proved that miracles still happen, especially for those brave enough to be miracles for others first. If this story reminded you that giving from our poverty, whether financial or emotional, can create transformations we never imagined, and that the miracles we need often come after we've been miracles for someone else, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope this season, and subscribe to our channel for more stories about unexpected kindness and the power of compassion to change lives. Leave a comment below about a time when giving something you couldn't afford to lose lead to unexpected blessings, or when someone's generosity toward you came at exactly the right moment. Your stories remind us all that we're capable of being each other's miracles, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in sacrifice and courage.